This is Red versus Blue, episode number 75. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
You've given me a laundry list of what's going on since the last show, and I think Jon Stewart said it best this past week when he said that a president is supposed to age while he's in office, not the American people.
It's challenging because every week it's something new and even more bizarre than the week before.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go down the list. First of all, Iran.
Well, Mike, when we last spoke, we were just beginning a war with Iran that we had announced that we'd won about 3 or 4 times. Apparently, it's not quite won because we've had a ceasefire. The status of the Strait of Hormuz is in dispute. It apparently is still mined. It is still blocked, but some ships are getting through, even though the United States is purportedly blockading it. Not clear how blockading the strait opens the strait, but nonetheless, we're doing so. And there were a round of negotiations. We're in the middle of a 2-week ceasefire. The ceasefire is going to end, I believe, in a few days. There is efforts afoot to resume negotiations. No Americans are in the air flying to Europe or other places to participate in those negotiations. So it's not clear what's going on. The president, in the meantime, has said it looks like we're close, but nobody knows what we're close to. They had a marathon session in Islamabad, in Pakistan, for the negotiations. It did not produce any announcements or any peaceful agreement. It was led by Vice President Vance. He had a tough week last week. So hopefully the negotiations will resume. The clock is running on the 2 weeks. The strait is may or may not be open. The market is reacting as if it's going to open. Oil prices hit $111 a barrel. The oil market says there may still be some more pain, although the futures market says it's going to ease. But the real answer is nobody really knows right now.
And you touched on it, but our vice president has not had a good week.
He did not. He was 0 for 3. He first went to Hungary to campaign for Viktor Orban, the Trump wannabe of Europe, who has been not only Trump's ally, but Vladimir Putin's strongest ally in Europe. He was soundly defeated by the Hungarian people. His party was washed out. He then went to Iran, where he was unsuccessful in negotiations that went in a marathon session overnight. And then he decided he was going to get in a fight with the Pope. Vance, of course, has not recently, but has converted to Catholicism and has a book coming out talking about his conversion to Catholicism. But apparently he didn't go to catechism class because he's taking on the Pope and telling the Pope that he should not lecture the country on theology, which I think is what the Pope is supposed to do.
I think that's his job.
It pretty much is. We're
going to kind of segue into the next piece, which is religion-oriented as well. Mr. Trump has decided that, what has he decided, Keith? Maybe you have some insight on this.
Well, Lord only knows. After a profanity-laced Easter tirade trying to persuade the Iranians to open the strait, which led with, Allah be praised or something, he posted a meme of himself appearing to be Jesus, appearing to heal somebody. The somebody appeared to be either Jon Stewart or Jeffrey Epstein. It's not clear who it actually was that was laying on the bed there getting the golden ball treatment. There were, depending on who you talk to, demons and statues of liberty and angels and God knows what flying in the background there. And it did not go over well. Anybody on the president's staff who is Christian could have told him that would have been highly offensive. Even Mike Johnson found the wherewithal to tell him that it was not received in the way he thought it was going to be received, which for Mike is major criticism of the president.
Right.
And he finally withdrew it and said, no, it's designed to make me look like a doctor, because my doctor wears Middle Eastern robes that remind people of a religious leader. And of course, he's been widely ridiculed by everybody about it. Many of his most vehement fundamentalist adherents have denounced it. He picked the same week to get in a fight with the Pope himself. So his Catholic constituents, and he won the Catholic vote, are mad with him. And he has basically shown that he has not read a single word out of one of those Bibles that he sold.
And as of this taping, he posted another Jesus picture this morning. I don't know if
he did. He had Jesus put his arm around him. So I guess he's getting more adept at doing AI, but less adept at understanding theology. And he's really sort of exacerbating his problems. And let's be clear. That was a deeply sacrilegious meme. There was a lot of speculation of, people who actually understand scripture, citing references to the Antichrist and saying, this is what it looks like. I don't believe Trump has any idea how deeply offensive it was to people of faith and Christians, but I think he's learning. So his base continues to crack up over the war, over his abuse of religious imagery, over his use of profanity, over the various sexual escapades in the administration, the corruption of his cabinet. He's splintering. And here's the thing about that. At the same time that Viktor Orban was losing his election in Hungary, the California Republican Party was meeting in San Diego, and he had just endorsed Steve Hilton. And so they were going to decide whether they were going to endorse one of the two major candidates. They did not. Neither candidate received 60% of the convention vote. But Chad Bianco actually had outpolled Hilton by 40 votes amongst the most activist conservative Republicans in the state at the state convention, showing that his endorsement had little influence with those party faithful in that case. So he is on a losing streak in terms of his impact.
I want to point out that, I never liked Sarah Palin that much. I always thought she was a little wacko. But she wins the internet today with the meme she put up. Did you see that one?
I did see it. When Sarah Palin starts to mock you, you know you're in trouble.
It's a picture of Jesus, just a simple picture of Jesus. And the caption it says, "All right, that's enough. Give me the phone." So, yeah.
That might be the wisest advice Trump's going to get all week.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move out of this realm of discussion, which, when you really analyze it, doesn't help the American people one iota. Any of the discussion we just had about the religious stuff going on.
No, it's a major distraction. It continues to dispirit and divide his base, but it's a major distraction to Americans.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to Melania had a press conference since the last time we got together.
Just when you're thinking, gosh, we've got another war going on, how can we get Epstein's back into the news? Melania decides to hold a press conference and basically pre-deny accusations that she was involved and knew Epstein very closely, a wrath of photographs notwithstanding, and basically said, yes, we should have the victims testify before Congress, something that the Republicans have been sort of pushing off and not really being supportive of over the months in Congress. It makes you wonder exactly what it is she's denying happened, because nobody's really accused her of much, really, except for a few wackos. But she felt the need to get her name out there and have something to say. It's not clear whether she cleared it with the president or with anybody else in the White House. But, there you go. There's your Epstein bite of the day.
Exactly. And then there's the big news over the last couple of days. Eric Swalwell, who was running for governor, he took a giant dive.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. If candidates do opposition research, and the first person you do opposition research on is yourself, to find out what other people are going to find when they look at you or look into you. And Eric Swalwell is clearly aware of all of the allegations and all of the opportunities and all of the instances that he has abused women or apparently raped women. And yet he chose to run for governor. And yet he chose to run for it when everybody's talking about it. And yet he had his head in a pillow sack or something and thought, well, nobody's going to say anything. Well, of course, they did. And they waited until sort of the right time to do it. It's not, to see who was going to emerge in the Democratic primary.
Right.
And he went from front runner to resign from Congress in a weekend. Tony Gonzalez, a Republican with similar issues, also resigned. They were able to pair them off so as to not change the balance of power in the House. And so that scrambles the California governor's race. It's not clear who's going to emerge now with the Democrats, probably somebody on the more liberal end, which will not be good for policy in the state. And we'll see which direction that takes the party. But I frankly think Mr. Swalwell is going to face criminal charges before this is all done. I mean, these are very serious charges in multiple jurisdictions, New York and California and Washington. So you've got various district attorneys who are going to be pursuing Northern and Southern California, who are going to be able to pursue charges on him. And he's going to need himself a good lawyer. And he's not going to have time to be a congressman. So he's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to point out one little thing about this whole situation. I have not heard one Democrat of any ilk come out and stick up for Eric Swalwell. This came out, what happened, and he's gone, and no one stepped up and said, no, we need to have him still be involved. I don't think that's the case, and all we have to do is look at Trump. That is not the case with the Republican Party. They will stick up for somebody until the person completely falls down.
They do stand up way too long. Now, in Tony Gonzalez's case, where he was involved with a woman staffer who killed herself, there were calls by Republicans for his expulsion, but there was no move by the leadership to actually expel him. So he was sort of left hanging there because they wanted his vote. I mean, it was a practical political decision and the wrong one. And they finally remedied that by being able to pair him off with Swalwell. Democrats, to their credit, threw him overboard much more rapidly, just like they did Cesar Chavez this week, by the way, frankly.
Yeah.
They deserve credit for that. And this, again, of course, it brings back to press the charges made by people against Donald Trump and his personal reputation and the lawsuit that was adjudicated against him for his actions in New York. For which he still has not paid the fines for which he was cited.
All right, let's do a quick update on the Senate races.
Well, they're moving in the direction of the Democrats. Georgia has moved from toss-up to a favored Democrat. That's a Democrat incumbent seat that they're more likely now to hold. North Carolina, a Republican seat, has moved to favor the Democrats. The governor there, Roy Moore, is now firmly in the lead. That would be a pickup for the Democrats. Ohio is looking more competitive for the Democrats. Maine is in play. Texas is still a looming problem because Ken Paxton is hanging on as a potential nominee. Florida now has become a potential problem because of the loss of Hispanic votes by Republicans, which they're hemorrhaging, which are absolutely critical to the Republican coalition in Florida. Trump's endorsements are not working in Louisiana to take Senator Cassidy out of the primary, nor in Kentucky to take Tom Massey out of the House. So you're seeing Democrats are getting stronger. Republicans are having issues, many of the issues caused by the president himself, who has gone after incumbent Republicans. Now, Republicans have a huge money advantage, so there is that. But, this was today's tax day, Mike. This should have been the day that the Republicans had a big press focus on. You're getting a bigger refund. Taxes are lower than they were the year before. So let's look at, who should get the credit for that. All of that is sort of lost in the noise today because we're talking about war and Swalwell and inflation and all of these things. So the Republicans are having a hard time helping themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that Mike Johnson held a press conference, and the Jesus issue came up during that as well. So when
you're trying to be on message and you have to explain the Jesus meme, you're just losing. I mean, that's just a problem.
All right, we do get emails. And Keith is going to address an email we got.
Well, one of our listeners wrote in and said, tell us about some California ballot measures regarding transparency and personal property tax exemptions. I should note that 28 initiatives have been cleared for circulation in California for the November ballot. 11 have achieved 25% of the signatures needed. 5 are pending verification. 3 have qualified. 2 failed to qualify. The one I think that relates to transparency would require an audit of any special tax approved by the voters to make sure that the funds are actually spent the way that they are advertised are going to be spent to the voters. There's some concern that taxes have been enacted by people thinking they're going to get one thing and there was a bait and switch and they got something else. And that may or may not qualify. Another one is a personal property tax prohibition on retirement accounts, which is a defensive measure by the billionaires who don't want to leave California by making their IRAs not subject to tax, and it would affect other people as well. Again, that's trying to be a blunting instrument for the Millionaires Tax Initiative, which has also been circulated. A next one would prevent the reassessment following transfer from parents to children. That was a realtor's gamut a few years ago to encourage properties to turn over. So if a child inherits the property from his parents, it gets reassessed eventually, and he doesn't get the full benefit of their parents' Prop 13 tax status, that would repeal that. And then another one would prohibit property taxes for anybody over 60. I don't think that's going to qualify or pass. I'd be a beneficiary for it. It would be pretty bad public policy. But that's what's going on in California, and those are not the most crazy initiatives being circulated. But our listeners have inquiring minds, and they asked, and there you have it.
Thank you very much for that, actually. And it is tax day as we're recording this. It is tax day. You talked about the taxes there. And I'm not going to place this at the feet of the Democrats or the Republicans, but I will say that in my entire life, I've never paid more taxes than I have this year, state and federal. So who's to blame? You be the judge.
There you go. Mike, that's a first world problem. That means you've had a great, successful year.
Yeah, right. Okay. I'll take that, Keith. Now you're sounding like a politician, my friend. All right. That's going to do it for another episode of Red versus Blue. We're going to take some time off. I'm going to take some time off because it's my turn to go on vacation. Keith went last month. I'm going for a week or so. And we will be back probably the first part of May sometime. Bring you back up to the date with what's going on as we move closer to the midterms, which are going to be important this year for sure. If you haven't liked us on Facebook, like our Facebook page. Subscribe on Spotify or any place else that you get your podcasts. And we will see you again next time on another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.